Welcome to R&R Living Life. We leave Port Augusta and make our way through the central part of South Australia, through some of the most isolated, unique wilderness in the state. We were looking forward to the journey through this picturesque part of the state along the open road as it winds its way through this immense landscape of violet to red tones of sandy and rocky areas mixed together to form some of the best preserved sceneries of our adventure. As we travelled further north, we were entering the Central Corridor subzone from Port Augusta through to Coober Pedy, with the majority of the region made up of large-scale pastoral properties and includes towns such as Pimba and Woomera. This part of South Australia is known as the Outback, home to awe-inspiring beauty, from mountain ranges, vast open plains and stony deserts, to lazy creeks and rivers, billabongs and wetlands, and is recognised for its exceptional beauty, charisma, and unforgettable experiences. Through quirky communities and iconic remote towns, steeped in history and culture, so we had a lot to look forward to. From Port Augusta, we leave the Flinders Ranges that span more than 430 kilometres of the region, presenting a 600 million year old story of the Earth's evolution behind, and we're entering the outback, the arid region of South Australia that covers around half of the state. Our journey today will take us along Stuart Highway, or the Explorer Highway, that runs from Port Augusta to Darwin, a distance of approximately 2,720 kilometres, but we would not be travelling that distance today. The highway was named after John McDowell Stuart, the first European explorer to successfully cross mainland Australia from south to north and return through the centre of the continent in 1861-62. In 1871-72, the overland telegraph line was constructed along Stuart's route, with the track being developed along the route of the telegraph line, and by 1888 the road between Adelaide and Alice Springs was well known. Several wells along the route provided water, although these could run dry or be contaminated by dead animals, resulting in sections as long as 232 kilometres without water. The route was traversed by motor vehicles in the 1920s. While passable, sections of the road could be sandy, boggy, washed away in the winter, or rugged with boulders. Several creek crossings were required, though few were difficult. With the onset of World War II, supply roads to the north of the country were considered vital by the federal government. A central north-south highway was planned to connect the railheads at Alice Springs to Birdham, 493 kilometres south of Darwin. The task of constructing the highway was split between the main roads departments of 3 states to ensure completion before the next wet season. The Alice Springs Birdham Road was constructed by December 1940, upgraded from an often impassable track to an all-weather sealed highway that could cope with heavy military traffic. The 492-kilometre highway was built in less than 90 days. The new highway, with the railways at either side, reduced Darwin's isolation. Quick and efficient movement of military equipment and troops were possible, with the road remaining open throughout the wet season. The highway was only fully sealed in 1987 as part of Australia's bicentenary roadworks. The highway took us past road trains with up to 4 trailers, remote landscapes and ever-changing stunning scenery. We were on the lookout for wildlife, kangaroos, emus, dingoes and small animals, cattle, horses and eagles, as well as other birds of prey, and not to forget the crows. The region includes some of the driest parts of South Australia and has the largest percentage of intact ecosystems and natural biodiversity in the state. This iconic terrestrial ecosystem, including sandy deserts, stony plains and dune fields, with the area home to a range of unique plants and animals, many of which are only found within the region, with the environment determined by irregular rainfall and other intermittent weather events that rarely follow predictable annual cycles. Though pastoralism, sheep and cattle stations dominate the land use, with more than 400,000 square kilometres taken up by sheep and cattle stations, we saw very few animals. Maintaining the soil, native vegetation and native wildlife in this arid region is crucial to the future sustainability of these industries and communities. Unlike agricultural regions further south, healthy native vegetation is crucial to the pastoral industry, providing viable fodder for fattening cattle and sheep. Large mining and petroleum companies also operate in the area. Australia's arid lands are part of a global network of deserts that stretch across the Americas, Africa and Asia. Often thought to be barren and lifeless, the world's arid lands are in fact home to some of the most highly adaptive plants and animals on Earth. Each region has its own distinctive flora, cacti in the Americas, euphorbias in Africa, and chenopod's in Australia. These unique plant communities support complex ecosystems that have developed special ways to thrive in places where drought conditions can last for decades. We stopped at a rest stop on the side of the highway. What a panoramic view of this unique arid zone, known for its harshness as well as the stark beauty of its unrelenting landscape. The vast arid interior is home to a myriad of plants and animals found nowhere else on Earth. From where I was standing, I was overlooking wide gibber plains with a light cover of chenopod's. In the distance was a woodland of western myall and acacia, and beyond that, to the southeast, the majestic Flinders Ranges. With its graceful and characteristic shape, western myall is a distinctive part of the landscape of the southern arid zone of Australia. To survive in this arid zone, all living things need water, and to survive periods of drought that sometimes last for decades, Australia's arid zone plants have special adaptations that help them collect, store and conserve water. Out of the vastness, Pimba, that lies within the Yarcuna pastoral lease, is a small settlement lying on the Transcontinental Railway line and at the junction of the Stuart Highway and the road to Woomera and Roxby Downs, and was where we were to make a side trip to our next point of interest. Pimba was originally established as a construction camp for the Transcontinental Railway in the early 20th century and was retained as a railway siding. It is reported as being surveyed as a township during the 1960s and was gazetted as a locality in August 2004. One of our bucket list places to visit was Woomera. The Woomera Prohibited Area is the largest land-based missile and rocket range in the Western world, used to test and launch satellites, rockets and weapons. Initially a joint project between Britain and Australia, the site continues to host space activities for Australia and international defence and aerospace organisations. In the 1960s, NASA operated a deep space tracking station 25 kilometres south of Woomera at Island Lagoon. Construction of the Woomera village, the domestic area of RAF base Woomera, began in the mid-1947 to cater for thousands of people moving there as part of an Anglo-Australian project, and initially operated as a closed town between 1947 and 1982. The British-Australian project, established in 1947, covered an area of approximately 122,000 square kilometres and saw Woomera become one of the most secret Allied establishments in operation during the Cold War. We visited the Woomera village and its 4 museum elements, with the National Missile Park in the centre of the village, which features a number of aircraft, rockets and bombs which were used in trials, along with missiles and rockets that were developed and tested at Woomera over its 60 years of the range's operation. While nearby was the Woomera Heritage Centre, which featured an introductory audio-visual presentation and an interpretive gallery that tells the story of the site, along with a significant display of regional history. This display also features the story of Len Bedell, the famous surveyor who laid out the original range across vast tracts of the Australian outback, stretching from Woomera to the northwest coast of Western Australia. The community museum was located within the Missile Park precinct and features a range of artefacts and the activities and people who lived and worked at Woomera in those early years. As we continued on our journey, I kept trying to take in the landscape before us. Every creek, hill, salt lake, change of vegetation, the geology of an area, the processes that shape the landscape, along with how erosion has impacted the landscape and its ecosystems, was thought-provoking. Some people think there is nothing out there and the drive boring, but to me it offered so much more than just emptiness. On our way back to the highway, we stopped in at the iconic Spud's Roadhouse to refuel and have a bite to eat. The Roadhouse is named after a well-known character, Spud, who passed away late 2007, but his story and life live on through the Roadhouse. As outback towns are few and far between, the pub is usually the meeting place of choice. As we were leaving Spud's Roadhouse, we stopped to watch a very long train as it passed through. The Trans-Australian Railway, 1,691 kilometres in length, was opened in 1917 and runs from Port Augusta in South Australia to Kalgoorlie in Western Australia, crossing the Nullarbor Plain in the process. The line was built to standard gauge rail, and as the only rail freight corridor between Western Australia and the eastern states, the line is economically and strategically important. The railway includes the world's longest section of completely straight track at 478 kilometres that stretches across the Nullarbor Plain and is the longest straight railway track in the world. A few years ago, Rick and I travelled this epic transcontinental crossing aboard the iconic Indian Pacific. What an experience! It was the most amazing 3 days of our lives, boarding in Perth and making our way across the continent. So much out there to see. What an amazing part of South Australia this area is. Thought to be mostly barren and isolated area, but if you look further afield there is always more to see, especially the various vegetation species that make this area their home. Not only have we seen the western myalls, but there is also a short-lived plant species called ephemerals, which can lie dormant for years as seeds, then spring to life after rain to complete their life cycles within weeks, most bearing bright flowers and producing a prolific crop of seeds. Arid zone plants usually have very small, sparse or needle-like leaves to reduce their surface area and therefore water loss by evaporation. Some plants, such as saltbush, shed some or all of their foliage during drought. Many arid zone plants have thick waterproof skins, wax-covered leaves or leaf spores or stomata that close tightly to reduce water loss. Some also have waxy or papery leaf surfaces to reduce sun damage, or they rely on spines and hairs on their stems and leaves to insulate and protect the leaf surface. We have seen succulent plants like pigface and bluebush that store water within their leaves and stems and can withstand high levels of dehydration. Many others die back to ground level and later reshoot because they have drought-resistant underground storage roots. The leaf pores or stomata in many arid zone plants are protected to limit water loss and to maximise water storage within the tissues of the plant. Specialised and extensive shallow root systems in many arid zone plants find water in ground that is barely moist. With strong root competition in chenopods like the saltbush, we could see the characteristic uniform spacing between plants that prevents new plants becoming established in the spaces, hence less competition for water. At our rest stop I stood and listened to the vast emptiness of the area and marvelled at how unique, tough and resilient this arid area was. For me there was so much to see and knowledge to absorb, vastly different from Queensland and the Territory's outback. From Spud's Roadhouse we made our way to Lake Hart, where we free camped overnight. Once considered one of Australia's most valuable salt deposits, Lake Hart was a hub of salt mining in the 1930s. Covering approximately 16,000 hectares, the lake is located in the Woomera prohibited area. Rick and I enjoyed the walk down to the lake's edge, where we enjoyed the beauty and stillness of the vibrantly pink lake, and then climbed to the sandhill for a different perspective. As the afternoon sun began to set, the colours were stunning, followed by such a clear night, lit with millions of stars. The sunset was spectacular, while the sunrise was eerily different, but still spectacular. The following morning we made our way to Glenbambo, that is the only service centre between Pimba and Coobapedy. There were no sandy beaches or rolling surf, no majestic waterfalls or pools to swim in, or popular tourist attractions to visit, but the wonder and vastness of the area was so worth stopping for. Across this vast inland arid area were many vast salt lakes that are often dry and appear as vast flat open areas with limited vegetation, and not the easy-to-find, vibrant pink lakes that most people follow. We have seen so many tourists drive past us as we are stopped at rest areas or pull-over spots along the Stuart Highway, just seeing the landscape pass them by, and I think they really don't see the strange, beautiful and colourful landscapes around them. The huge size and distance we see is staggering, but I don't think they realise that there is more out there to see and learn about than just the highway. Maybe it is just Rick and I who enjoy the land for all its beauty. Rick and I will leave you for this episode as we make our way further along the Stuart Highway to Coobapedy, past mine sites, travelling along the top of plateaus and past breakaways through ever-changing country. Give us a thumbs up if you have enjoyed this episode. Join us next time in Coobapedy. Stay safe and enjoy life. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, living life.